What's happening, guys and girls? Acrinator here, and welcome to another episode of World of Warcraft Dungeon Overview. This episode will be delving into the Blackrock Mountain for the first time since vanilla, in order to take up arms against the Twilight Hammer's cult, hiding out within the Blackrock Caverns. I'll be guiding you through this dungeon with my paladin you see here, so with that being said, let's dive straight into it. With the resurgence of the Deathwing during the Shattering, and the Twilight's Hammer cult ramping up their productivity tenfold, they've found themselves in need of a base of operations for their terrible experiments. Many rogue elemental beings across Azeroth have chosen to side with the aspect of death, giving the Mad Dragon plenty of test subjects in the pursuit of forming ascendant beings. According to our intelligence, the father of the Black Dragons himself carved out a network of tunnels underneath Mount Hyjal all the way to Blackrock Mountain, duly dubbed the Blackrock Caverns. The cult has been utilizing these caves to transport elementals to the Eastern Kingdoms, giving them both a stronghold right near Stormwind and Ironforge, and allowing them to operate right underneath our noses up until now. Deeper than even the now allied Shadowforge city of the Dark Irons, dark shamans and twisted elementals are combining their efforts to form a force much more malevolent than we ever thought possible previously. Shedding their mortal bonds, they're attempting to mold themselves into immortal ascendant elemental lords. This may be a mission out of desperation, but that doesn't change the fact that we need to stop the ritualists from transcending, as well as scout as much information as possible about what the Twilight's Hammer cult is now capable of. Blackrock Caverns is a level 80 to 85 dungeon with a heroic mode located inside the Blackrock Mountain dungeon hub. I know this place can be pretty confusing to navigate if you're not familiar, but fortunately this is probably the easiest dungeon entrance to find in this forsaken mountain. Once you make it into the main chamber of the mountain as you see me doing here, just head over to the side and look for the gateway that's been smashed open. From there, just make your way up the walkway and take your first right. The entrance will be straight ahead. For some reason the portal itself isn't visible, but trust me, it's there. Walk forward and you'll teleport in just like normal. Ramag is one of a rare breed of missing link ogres from Outland. I believe this particular kind of creature is one step in between an ogron as we see in Warlords of Draenor and the ogres that we're more accustomed to seeing nowadays. As you can imagine, any creature with both ogre and gron blood running through its veins will prove to be especially formidable, which is exactly why the Twilight's Hammer took an interest in this lug. They brought him through the Dark Portal, gave him as much dark magics as he could handle, and have appointed him as the guardian for the first major chamber on this side of the tunnels. This fight isn't too bad as long as your DPS in particular are prepared to burst down the right targets at the right time, which of course will shift depending on the phase of the fight. The first major ability you want to look out for is called Quake, where the ground underneath each party member will begin to crack and rupture. After a few seconds, the ground will open up, creating multiple small pools of damage for anyone nearby. I'd personally recommend grouping up for this fight to avoid spreading ruptures throughout the entire chamber, and moving around together as a group as they spawn. It is also important to note that these ruptures will actually summon trash mobs on heroic mode. These don't have any major abilities of their own, but they do add a bit of extra damage to tank, so it's probably best to AoE them down quickly and continue on like normal. For every third of the health bar you take away from Ramag, he'll stun all players and group them together with Chains of Woe. These chains can be targeted and destroyed, and I would highly recommend saving your cooldowns for them because you'll need to earn your freedom quickly. Immediately after binding you, the boss will begin casting the Skullcracker, which is more or less an insta-kill for anyone within 12 yards of him, regardless of how geared you are. Thankfully, it takes 12 seconds on normal mode and 8 seconds on heroic mode in order to cast, so you're given a bit of a grace period to get the hell out of dodge. As we've seen during the Nexus Wars against the Blue Dragonflight, it's not too uncommon for mages of the Kirin Tor to abandon their kin in their quest for more power, and so it shouldn't surprise anyone that Korla was once a denizen of Dalaran before the Twilight's Hammer came knocking on her door, offering more power than she could have ever dreamed of. Through her dark research, Korla has found a way to transform Twilight Zealots into Twilight Draconids, increasing their power exponentially. As if the cult wasn't a big enough pain in our ass, now we have to worry about the possibility of even more dark monstrosities crawling out of the mountain to attack us. But of course, there's a catch. Korla is the most proficient mage in the cult that can perform these transformations, meaning that if we take her out, they'll be set back greatly. It won't be easy considering the amount of protection she's receiving, but that's never stopped us before. The first thing you want to do before pulling the boss is to clear out all the trash mobs in the surrounding area. This is because Korla can fear random players, and believe me when I say you don't want any extra added damage onto what you're expected to have. After that's all done, the fight itself will be relatively simple simple depending on the difficulty you're playing with. You'll see either 2 or 3 zealots kneeling in front of the boss. Don't worry about them for now because they can't be damaged for any reasonable amount while they're waiting for the ritual. Just focus on the boss for the time being. When the fight starts, Corla begins to cast Evolution, drawing a line of energy from a Netherdrake corpse to the zealots. That's when you'll have to make your move. Your DPS, specifically any meleeers you have, will want to stand in between the beam of energy and the zealot. If you can absorb the energy yourself, you can avoid the enemies from being upgraded. Once you absorb 100 stacks of Evolution, you yourself will transform, giving you a whole new set of powerful abilities to use against the boss. So long as you mind the beams of energy and avoid allowing the zealots to transform, this fight has the potential to be nothing more than a tank and spank. The Twilight's Hammer cult isn't just working on creating ascended warriors, they've toiled away at giving their best and brightest members new powers as well. This way, even those that help with the important logistical tasks such as armor and weapons manufacturing can defend themselves from any would-be assassins. One particular material the cult has experimented with is Quicksilver, for its surprising ability to reduce the majority of incoming damage once the armor has set. Unfortunately for them, the only smith they have that's mastered working with such a fickle metal is Karsh Steelbringer, who just so happens to be the next sap standing in our path. This fight used to be the biggest pain in the ass back in the day, because it has a bit of nuance to it, mostly relying on the kiting abilities of your tank. As he's just walking around normally, the boss will take 99% reduced damage. Luckily, there's a lava spout in the center of the room that you can kite Karsh through in order to superheat his armor and take away the damage reduction for a limited time. Likewise, Karsh will take 5% extra damage for a little while once his armor is superheated, and this effect does stack every second he is underneath the lava. Unfortunately, the boss will cause an AoE while he's under the lava as well, meaning you have to be careful about how long you leave him under there. The boss also deals extra fire damage to the tank while he's heated. So my recommendation would be to lead Karsh underneath the lava for about 3 to 5 seconds before kiting him back out. Exactly how long you leave him under there is really dependent on how comfortable your healer is in this situation. If they can't heal through a large number of stacks, just stick with 3, but if you can get away with it, 5 would be optimal. Obviously, it's best to save your cooldowns for the superheated phase to burst the boss down quickly, but you should also be wary of various trash mobs that may spawn throughout the fight. None of them are too consequential, but you should take them down quickly as to avoid any extra damage piled on top of what is already a damage-heavy fight. You may recall back in the classic version of Upper Blackrock Spire where we fought off a core hound called Beast. Well, of course it had a mate, and of course her name is Beauty. Disney references aside, this great elemental behemoth has apparently decided to team up with the Twilight's Hammer in order to seek vengeance on the adventurers that killed her beloved. I'll be honest, I didn't think core hounds had any sort of sentience, but okay. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna argue with her. In heroic difficulty, you will also have to fight 2 of Beauty's 4 pups as well, so just keep that in mind. This fight is relatively simple. It mostly has to do with minor positional abilities, the most important of which is called Flame Break, where all enemies within 12 yards will take some damage and be knocked back. Just stay out of her range if you're a caster to avoid needless damage. The only other significant ability is called Magma Spit, where a random player will take fire damage over a short period of time. After the ability expires, magma will shoot out from the affected player to random locations 5 yards away. Anyone near these locations when the blobs land will take considerable fire damage, so spread out to avoid killing your group. Deseric was one of the most devout followers of Deathwing, and was rewarded for it. Elemental forces charged his body, ripping him from the mortal plane of existence, and ascending him into what he is today. With his new form came a new name, Obsidious, and plenty of new tricks for which to fend off any onslaught should it come his way. This fight is somewhat simple in the fact that there's really only one ability to look out for, but it's also quite difficult to deal with said ability when you get down to the nitty-gritty. That ability is called Shadow of Obsidious, which are effectively ghost versions of the boss that will accompany him throughout the fight. There will be 2 or 3 ghosts depending on which difficulty you're in, and they cannot be targeted in any way. What makes them even more annoying is that they will attack the player with the most threat generation and aren't affected by the tank's taunts. As such, your healer should be especially careful not to draw the ire of these unsavory apparitions. Whoever the unlucky soul is to be attacked by the shadows will take significantly less healing as a result, meaning that you should pop any survival cooldowns if it happens to be you. As for the boss himself, the only thing he'll really do that you should know about is that he'll trade places with a random shadow at 69 and 34% health. The best advice I can give to you is pop all of your cooldowns early on and burst the boss down as quickly as possible. The less time your healer has to worry about the target of the shadows, the better. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like it, maybe even subscribe. Links to my social media and whatnot are in the description below. And as for the comment question, do you think Blizzard missed out on an opportunity to reintroduce nether dragons in Cataclysm? The way Twilight dragons are made is by siphoning their nether essence and bestowing it upon black dragon eggs. And yet we don't get to see much of the nether drakes besides the Mount Quest chain from the Burning Crusade. Anyways, that's all the time I've got for today, so until next time, don't die.